Hey guys, and welcome to the video on sector graphs. By the end of this video, you should be able to draw a sector graph. So let's have a look at what they are. Sector graphs are circle graphs. You may have heard them referred to as pie graphs. Major features are they start off with a circle, and then each part of the circle or each sector of the circle represents an amount. Now, this particular sector graph obviously is about sport, has gymnastics and tennis and track. It's also got some percentages written underneath it so you can see the size of each sector as a percentage of the total. Here we also have some more sports, cricket, netball, rugby league and soccer. The good thing about sector graphs is that they show very quickly which one is the greatest in size. Netball's obviously the most popular in this sector graph. They also have titles, or at least they should have titles. These two don't have titles, but these were just taken from the internet to show you what a sector graph is. In this video, we're going to learn how to draw these sector graphs, so let's get started. As always, whenever you're drawing a graph, you need data to begin with. So in this example, we have 72 people who were asked what their favorite sport was. And I'm sorry to keep the sport reference to keep going, but it's just the easiest thing to pick. We're going to draw a sector graph for all this information. Now, I've already started a table. Here you notice that I've got the four sports: football, soccer, basketball, and tennis. And here I have the amounts: 36, 18, 12, and 6. The first thing I would do is just make sure that those numbers do indeed add up to 72, which they do. That means that all the numbers and all the people are accounted for. Now I want to translate these numbers into sectors, into parts of a circle, in order to represent my data. What I need to be able to do that is I need to be able to turn those numbers into a fraction of my total circle, whether this 36 represents a half or a quarter of my circle. And then once I've worked out the fraction, I need to know how big the angle size is going to be at the center of the circle. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that in this video. So to begin with, I have 36 people who like football. Now that 36 is 36 out of the total of 72. So my fraction is just going to be 36 out of 72. You could simplify this fraction, but in all honesty, it's not necessary for what we want to do in this video or in this particular graph. Now, soccer, if I wanted to work out what fraction of the people like soccer, 18 people like soccer out of 72. So my fraction is going to be 18 over 72. It's quite simple to work out what the fraction of the total each of these sports represents. Why don't you pause the video and try and write the next two fractions yourself? Oh, and by the way, you're going to have to draw up this table, so you may as well write it up now. Okay, if you've paused it and you filled it in already, you should have 12 out of 72 and 6 out of 72 for the last two. They're our fractions. Now that fraction represents how much of the circle that I'm going to need to color in. So now that I have the fractions, I'm going to turn them into angles. Now the thing that you need to know about these fractions and how to turn them into angles is that this 36 out of 72 represents a part of a whole circle. And a circle is made up of 360 degrees. That is a full turn in a circle. So what I'm going to do is, if I want to work out how much of that circle I'm going to color in, I'm going to take my fraction and I'm going to multiply it by 360 degrees. Imagine that that's at a half. It is a half, and what I'm actually working out is what is a half of 360 degrees. Now you might be able to do that in your head. You can use a calculator to do this, but the answer is going to be 180 degrees. That's how big the angle at the center of the circle has to be to represent football. And that's what I'm going to actually do right now. So I start off with a line. Now this line that I'm drawing is called a radius. It goes from the center of the circle to the circumference, or to the outside of the circle. And it's important to draw because it's a baseline to start with. That is what I'm going to measure 180 degrees from. Now, you might take a guess as to how I'm going to measure, or at least what device I need to measure a circle, and that is a protractor. So I'm going to take my protractor and I'm going to place it over the center of my circle. I'm going to make sure that at the center, right here, is where my the bottom of my 90 is, and it also lines up with the 0 and the 180 over here. And you'll also notice that this line at the bottom of my protractor goes right along the line that I drew to start off with, my radius. Now over here I've got two numbers. I've got 0 and 180. That means I've got two sets of numbers. I'm going to refer to them as outside numbers, and I'm going to refer to them as inside numbers. So when we're measuring over here, because here's our numbers, we're going to measure from where our 0 is, and our 0 is on our inside numbers. So when I measure 180 degrees, or if I were to measure 40 degrees, or to 80 degrees, or to 110 degrees, I'm going to be using my inside numbers because that's where the 0 is. And when I measure from 0 and I go all the way around to 180 degrees, here's my 180. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a dot over here, and I'm going to draw a line towards that dot. It may not necessarily get to the dot, or it might go past the dot, but it needs to get to the circumference. I've made this line green so that you can see that this is the line that I drew, and that's going to be important later on. What I've done now is I've drawn a straight line which represents 180 degrees. This sector is for football. Now you can color that in if you like, but I'm just going to label it. It's easier for me in this video. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you soccer. So I've done football. It's 180 degrees. It's half my circle. I'm going to do soccer. Now to work out how big the angle is for soccer, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to take my fraction and I'm going to multiply it by 360 degrees. Putting that into your calculator, or just working it out for yourself that 18 is a quarter of 72, we're actually working out what a quarter of 360 degrees is. It's going to be 90. So this next sector has to have a 90-degree angle at the center. Something else you might want to notice is that 18 is half of 36. What that means is that my angle is going to be half of 180 degrees. You may have noticed that as well. All right, here's what I've got to do now. I've got to measure 90 degrees, but I'm not going to start where I started last time, because then my sector would go over the top of my football sector, and that's not very useful. I need to measure from where I just drew my last line, my last radius. I've turned my protractor upside down. You can turn your page upside down if you like, but this is where I'm going to measure 90 degrees from. Again, my 0 here is on the inside, so I'm going to be counting my inside numbers, and I'm going to put a dot below the 90 degrees. Again, this is on the outside of the circle. That's not a problem. I'm going to draw a line from the center to that dot. Again, I've changed the color. It's now orange, but it only goes to the circumference. Now, when I take away my protractor, I have a sector for soccer, which is represented by a 90-degree angle at the center. Okay, you might want to pause the video now and try the next two for yourself. If not, wait a second and I'll get right onto it. Okay, hopefully you had a go and you worked out that 12 out of 72, what we will do is we'll multiply that by 360 and we will get 60 degrees. So I need to draw a 60-degree angle. I'm going to get my protractor and I'm going to move it down to my circle again. And again, I'm going to start from 0 degrees on the inside numbers. So I need to go up to 60 on the inside numbers. And I'm going to put a dot at the edge of my protractor. I'm now going to draw a line in from the center towards my 60 degrees. And when I move away my protractor, I now have a sector that represents basketball. This is 12 out of 72. This is 60 degrees at the center. The final part for tennis, is 6 out of 72. And if I wanted to work out what that angle was, I'd do 6 out of 72 times 36. You might notice that 6 is half of 12. So this sector for tennis has to be half the size of basketball. That's why tennis is 30 degrees. It's half the size of 60. But you could calculate that on your calculator. Now, I could go to my circle here and I could put my protractor down again, but I don't need to because I've got one sector left. And this, if I measured it up, would be 30 degrees. All I need to do is make sure that I label this tennis, and I've almost completed my sector graph. The only thing that I'm missing is a title, favorite sport, and I'm done. This is how you draw a sector graph. We have a circle which uses all the information, and we have all the information represented inside this circle. We could color in each of these sectors if we wanted to, and you might want to do that later on. What I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to pause and draw up this example along with the table, as well as all the fractions and all the working out inside the table, and if you have a protractor, to draw up this sector graph at home. After you've done that, there's going to be another screen that I'd like you to write down, and these are just going to be steps that are going to be worthwhile for you. So pause and summarize. Okay, if you did that, here's the next step. I'm actually going to give you steps to drawing a sector graph. So if you put this in your book, it'll be good to refer to, as you try and draw your own. So step number 1, we found the fraction that each amount represented. So 36 represented a fraction of 36 out of 72. Then what we did was we multiplied the fraction by 360 because a circle adds up to 360 degrees, and that gave us the size of the sector angle. In our case, 36 out of 72 was multiplied by 360, and it gave us 180. We then drew a circle, and we drew a radius, which was the line from the center of the circle to the outside, and that was a baseline that we could draw off of. And then we used our protractor to measure each angle, making sure that we started at 0. I think these are good steps to write down. You should pause and summarize these steps for yourself and write them in your book. And that's it. Okay, that's how you draw a sector graph. You can go back and watch this video again, or you can refer to your notes. As always, ask questions. Good luck.